Our chief guest, Mr. B.B. Swine, who is the Secretary, Ministry of MSME, Government of India, Mr. Pankaj Bhai Patel, Chairman of the Zydus Life Sciences and past President of Ahmedabad Management Association, the subject experts, Mr. Anil Jain, Mr. Virenchi Shah, Mr. Rahul Shah, and of course the sponsor of this activity center, Mr. Jamin Bhai Vasa, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Ahmedabad Management Association, I welcome you all to this interaction meet, growth prospects for MSME in focus sectors, challenges and opportunities. And this event is being organized on the auspices of one of our activity centers, Dr. Jamin Vasa AMA MSME Development Center. We are very indeed fortunate to have Mr. B.B. Swine here because people in industry know him. He was a very active person in the Gujarat government, and he was also the industries commissioner. And I was told today Mr. Vasa's book, the Global SMEs and Strategies for Sustainable Growth, will also be released today. So it's once again I welcome you all, and then I hand it over for the further proceedings of the evening. And I'm sure it will be a great take home for all of us today. Thank you.
Can I please request Mr. Divyesh Radia to felicitate our guest, Mr. Pankaj Bhai Patel. Can I please request Dr. Jamin Vasa to felicitate Mr. B.B. Swain. Can I request Ambar Bhai to please felicitate Mr. Anil Bhai Jain. Can I now request Mr. Savan Godiawala to felicitate Mr. Rahul Shah. Can I request Dr. Jamin Vasa to please come and share a few words?
Respected Shri B.B. Swain Sir, IAS Secretary, Minister of MSME, Government of India, Shri Pankaj B. Patel, Chairman, Zydus Life Sciences Limited, and past President, Ahmedabad Management Association, Mr. Divyesh Radia, AMA President, Mr. Dr. Savan Godiawala, AMA Vice President, and all the governing council members, today's speakers, experts, Mr. Anil Jain, representing SN Finechem, Dr. Viranchi is yet to come, and Mr. Rahul Shah, ACME International, distinguished guest on the dais and off the dais, media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. I am delighted with the audience numbers and extremely honored and by the elite gathering. I would also like to thank Shri Swain Sir for his gracious presence all the way from Delhi. Even though he is very busy, still he made it time for me and came to release my book and attend the event as a chief guest. Thank you, Swain Sir. I really appreciate that Shri Pankaj B. Patel took time out of his very busy schedule and agreed to be among us to release my book. Thank you, Pankaj Bhai. Dear friends, looking to my expertise and PhD research in MSME as well as experience as an MSME committee chairman in Gujarat Chamber of Commerce for almost 11 years, I'm very thankful to Ahmedabad Management Association for giving me a chance to start a specialized MSME center under the banner of Dr. Jaimin Vasa AMA MSME Development Center to give services like counseling, consultation, and other related service to MSME at a free of cost and give real-life solution and other guidance to MSMEs. My main objective to start this MSME center at AMA is mainly to empower the MSME entrepreneurs in Ahmedabad and Gujarat by adopting holistic approach towards spirit of entrepreneurship, excellence, and supporting the state in creating suitable environment for meeting the growth and the sector for the benefit of the nation and the society at large. Today, we organize MSME Interaction Meet on the topic Growth Prospects for MSMEs in focus sectors, that is challenges and opportunities of chemical, pharma, and textile industries. Mr. Anil Jain, Mr. Viranchi Shah, he has come already, and Mr. Rahul Shah will express their views regarding challenges, opportunities, and issues. In all the three sectors, they will interact with the Swain sir, and there will be a question answer session. Today is a very happy occasion. Also, as my second book on MSME is going to be released today. This book is Global SMEs and Strategies for Sustainable Growth. Generally, the author's deliberation consists of what is in the book besides what made him write it. Small and medium enterprises play a major role in most economies, particularly in developing countries. SMEs account for the majority of businesses worldwide and are important contributors to job creation and global economic development. They represent around 90% of the businesses and more than 50% of the employment worldwide. Formal SMEs contribute up to 40% of national income, that is GDP, in emerging economies. These numbers are significantly higher when informal SMEs are included. According to our estimate, 600 million jobs will be needed by 2030 to absorb the growing global workforce, which makes SME development a high priority for many governments around the world. And in emerging markets, most formal jobs are generated by SMEs, which create 7 out of 10 jobs. This book, Global SMEs and Strategies for Sustainable Growth, have primarily focused on the strategic importance of small and medium enterprises and its role in the growth of economy. I have analyzed all the parameters to identify successful strategies adopted for their sustainable growth by the SMEs in developed and developing countries like USA, Canada, European Union, Germany, France, UK, Argentina, China, New Zealand, Asia Pacific, Australia, South Africa, Turkey, India, and Bangladesh. This book contains many valuable information like each country's of geographical position, cultural heritage, main industrial sectors, SME definitions in each country, economic contribution of SMEs in the form of employment, GDP, export, etc., and also ease of doing of each countries. Friends, there is a separate chapter regarding the issues and challenges faced by the SMEs of each country, as well as the government schemes and policies for the growth of SMEs introduced in each country. Also, probable measures for the growth and sustainability of the global SMEs taken by the respective government. This book contains many valuable information, and many more countries can boast their growth by strong SMEs. In a fast-paced world with ever-changing technology and ways of working, having innovative and nimble small businesses is more important than ever. To have global approach, SMEs need to more and more understand the importance of technology and need to adopt latest innovations. This book also serves multi-purpose requirements of small and medium enterprises, students, startup, and budding entrepreneurs. This book will also be very useful to the policymakers, financial institutions, government officials to frame out the policies and regulations for the growth and development of SMEs. Also, this book will be useful to the students and scholars, those who want to do further research. Writing a book is a difficult task. It requires 3 P: passion, persiveness, and participation. I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious. There is no greatness without a passion to be great, whether it's an aspiration of an athlete or an artist, a scientist, a parent, or a business person. Passion has to be the great. I am thankful to my wife Vaishali and my daughters Surunan and Brujal and other family members for their constant support and encouragement. Also, all authors require support and cooperation of people from the different walks of life. My special and sincere thanks to my Executive Secretary, Mr. Anthony, for his valuable help and support for data collection, compilation, as well as statistical analysis. I am also thankful to my personal assistant, Meena Mekwan, and other staff members for their constant support throughout the period of writing this book. And also, it's a great pleasure to thank Mr. Yagnesh Pandya, who is here, for Print Vision and his team for the very timely delivery of this book. Friends, I am dedicating this book by remembering my parents, late Sri Rasiklal Vasa and late Srimati Asha Ben Vasa, from whom came the most important learning of my life, that all people are born equal and need to be treated as equal. I am happy to announce that today we have also inaugurated Dr. Jaimin Vasa MSME Clinic to diagnose the root cause of the sickness or to provide any valuable solutions to avoid possible failures of the MSMEs. And we have also launched MSME Institute for Growth and Sustainability, useful to MSME entrepreneurs, startups, and students. From the bottom of my heart, once again, I thank you all for your encouragement and participating in this book to release the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jaimin Vasa. Can we now, without waiting much, can we now have all the guests, I invite all of them for the book launch, the most awaited moment. Can I please request Shri Pankaj Bhai Patel, Chairman Zydus Life Sciences and past President of AMA, to say a few words.
Mr. B.B. Swen, Secretary Government of India, Dr. Jaimin Vasa, Dr. Viranchi Shah, Divyesh Bhai Radia and the office bearers of AMA, the panel of speakers, ladies and gentlemen. We just saw the cover of the book. But the cover itself tells you, and the size of the book itself tells you that how much of labor has really gone in making this book. What is more important to see, all of us were born and then grown up, did a lot of things in life, learned a lot of things in the process, but very few people pen down their experiences and try to be helpful to others. So I must compliment Jaimin Bhai for actually taking that trouble to really pen down, based on his understanding of business over the years, something which could be useful for the people around. So compliment Jaimin Bhai, and I think it's a really proud moment for him and his family that such a book has finally come in which will be helpful for the people. When we talk about MSME, we all know that MSME is the basic fundamental pillar of growth of any nation. If you look at India, almost 1/3 of GDP, industrial production is done by MSME. Close to 40 or more percentage exports also occurs from MSME. And more importantly, they are the major employer. The number of people employed by MSME, I don't have the latest number, but what I understand is around 11 crores, likely to become 15 crores in time to come. But again, these numbers I may not be exactly correct. What is important is that almost every business started as MSME. My company also started as MSME, grew it. What really needs to be done is that if MSME, more and more MSME come up, then what we need is startups, because startups are at the bottom of this pyramid to start growing up, going up. And these startups, the policy and the startups which are occurring now in India itself is a stepping stone toward creating future MSME. I still remember years back, if you have a investment in plant and machinery less than 10 lakh rupees, you're small scale. And for many years, people were creating number of small scale units and not doing it. And in the process, efficiency was being missed out. Because there was certain advantage available to small scale, people were finding ways to make that happen. Over a period, things have changed, and now the whole definition of small scale moved to MSME, and with that, now at least a much larger investment is possible, and that can really help to move and do things for people when they grow in their business, to invest more and make their business bigger. Also very interesting thing which I saw in this book is talks about different markets. And I think this is something which is very important. But, we talk about various experts are here. Who is going to talk about commodity? But how do we market India globally as commodity? What can be done? So one of the idea I borrowed, of course, from not a country we would like to mention, but still, is China. So, China started journey long back, and for every commodity, they used to have a kind of an exhibition. And they would invite all the buyers of the world to come and visit that exhibition. They will give them the ticket, give 3 days stay in China, and hotel stay and everything, and they will go back. And their rule was, they will do it for 3 years consecutive and stop, but the exhibition will continue, then people will come on their own. In that, one example I read it, and I'm really, there is a cigarette lighter, costs 10 rupees, 20 rupees or less. They used to have started having a lighter exhibition. 5,000 Chinese small scale players were participating in the exhibition. They invited people from mainly US and Europe and other countries to come and stay 3 days, meet and see lighters, discuss with them. Everybody said, I want this color, this picture on that, etc., etc. And after the 3 years, the China's lighter export was $1 billion. Now you can understand that this is the way things can happen. And I only say this, that we as a country also need to do this. And that has to happen with, of course, industry associations, government, and everybody put together resources together to make sure, because this is the only way you can develop as an alternative supplier. And now that we are in a situation where China plus strategy is a common thing for everybody, it is very important for all of us to really take advantage. I believe next 10 years is of India, and I think if we have to extract maximum of that, we have to do something different than what we have done up till now. Unless we do different than what we have done up till now, I don't think we could actually take advantage of this opportunity which has come in front of us. I don't want to say many more because Sven Saab is here. He understands the policy much more and might tell you more about it and what are his thoughts and other things. But I'm very happy to be here. I want to compliment Jaimin Bhai and his family for the wonderful book they have published and wish him all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pankaj Bhai. Today we have gathered here for the interaction session on growth prospects of MSME in focus sectors. What are these focus sectors? Here the 3 sectors that we have included is chemical, pharma, and textiles. The Indian chemical industry has a huge role to play to make India a US $5 trillion economy by contributing around US $300 billion to the GDP of 2025. The industry is growing with a CAGR of 9.3%. So as a sector plays a significant role in enabling the growth of the Indian economy, the country needs to build a competitive landscape for the chemical industry. Similarly, we are including the pharma sector, which is one of the top 5 sectors contributing to the foreign exchange earnings and provides employment to over 2.7 million people. And lastly, the textile industry, which has around 4.5 crore employed workers, including 35.22 lakh handloom workers across the country. Without taking much of time, I shall invite Mr. Anil Jain, Ascent Fine Chemicals, from the chemical sector, Dr. Viranchi Shah, National President, Indian Drug Manufacturing Association from the pharma sector, and Mr. Rahul Shah, ACME International from the textile sector. This will be an interaction session. Yeah. And before that, I would like to welcome Vrujal to felicitate Mr. Viranchi Shah. So we shall be going ahead with the interaction session with the eminent speakers of the 3 sectors.
Thank you very much. I'm Anil Jain. I represent MSME from the chemical sector and into the specialty chemical sector. Since we are short of time, I'll just straight away not give more statistics about everything has been said, but just wanting to say that we are in the specialty chemicals, we have a long way to go. We are only 4% of the world production, single-digit production right now. And in China is about 18% of the specialty chemical manufacturing. So we do have a lot of potential, a lot of scope to present into the chemical industry, and specifically the specialty chemical industry. big advantage specialty chemical industry is generally the specific manufacturing process is batch type, which is huge labor intensive industry, be it APIs, be it bulk drugs, performance chemicals, agrochemicals. There's a lot of batch type industry where we have actually a big labor arbitrage. We have a big advantage. Our cost of labor is not as high as the other countries. Specifically now we are much competitive than the Chinese. Having said that, we also have to explore into many areas where currently our specialty chemical industry is mainly into imitative products, like too many people chasing the same products. So I think there's a huge potential where we have to carve out a niche in the specialty chemical sector, where one has to go down the value chain and add more products. Third option, which is now coming with the China Plus factor, as well as, sir, the high energy cost in Germany, where contract manufacturing is now being looked upon as an alternative to India. And that's where our challenge also comes, when we're talking about contract manufacturing, contract research, where the flexibility on the environment side, the regulatory is what is bothering the MSME. I'll take it separately, but that's one area where contract manufacturing helps us. And also it helps us to weather the volatility storm, because most of the contract manufacturing is done on base of cost plus basis. So all the raw material cost, the MSMEs are always short of funds. So the cost factor is taken care of. So that's one area to be looked upon. Recently, the government has, extended the PLI scheme to the chemical industry, and which is a very big welcome step in the Atmanirbhar scheme. However, challenges, I'd like to come back to the challenges. As MSME, we have to be very agile and nimble footed. We have to respond to the market situation. Now, in the chemical sector, in the specialty chemical sector, there is a requirement of getting a permit, so most of the permits given are product based and not emission based. So, for example, there's a dye manufacturing company, and there's a color fashion changes. So if I'm producing a black, I'm expected to produce only black. If the yellow or a green, I cannot change that product. So that's a big hindrance to the growth of the MSME at the moment. Also, with this volatility of chemicals, fortunately we are in the chemistry business. We have to look at new ROS also when some products become not viable because of availability of feedstock, and we have to change the route of synthesis. So even that is not permitted as on today. So that is one area we need to have a look. Similarly, in change of equipment, when we have to go for upgradation, that's another area where MSMEs are not allowed to do that. Also, although there are a lot of scheme of MSME funding, but access to funding is generally a problem to the actual MSMEs. One area where we would request your intervention is we do not have an ecosystem for innovation. We have great academia here, but industry academia relationship is not present. For example, we are in a textile hub, but most of the universities do not address any programs on textiles or dyes or textile chemical related things. So these are just a few observations and challenges which we face. Of course, logistics has been a major challenge over the years, over the last 2 years. One last thing which I would like to say is about the growth mindset. Although we have come out of the license Raj, but honestly, sir, the observation is whenever we go for any permit, the question asked is, why do you want so much of capacity? Or if you go for a permit for R&D products, the question asked is, why do you want to do so much of R&D? You ask for 10 tons of R&D product permit, we'll give you 1. So that mindset, something has to be done about the mindset. MSMEs can grow, but there has to be conducive environment. Everybody has to believe in that growth. Like Pankaj Bhai rightly said, all MSCs have grown up to larger companies. So there has to be an environment, especially in the bureaucracy also. So whenever you go for a license, 100 tons nahi denge, aap 50 ton le lo. So that mindset, somehow we have to also tinker around and make it to take the industry to the next level. I think I've briefly covered most of the challenges of the chemical industry. Looking forward to having more interaction from you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I came here essentially for the inauguration of my very old friend's book. I mean, I call him a very old friend because when I joined Industries Department, he was my first visitor. So there's a lot of emotional connect to Dr. Vasa right from that day. And he came and he invited me for a function the next day. I actually told him that I cannot rush like this. I hardly understand the thing. I was in education. It took me some time to understand. I mean, it obviously takes any new person time to understand. But you came. But I came, and that friendship has continued. Yeah. And over the years, I watched his great passion toward this particular subject. He has grown bigger, but his passion has stayed very fixed on the MSME sector. And he has been a visitor to Delhi. Yeah. He has been meeting people. I have been helping him out in setting down his next visit to Croatia. So I tried to advise him on whatever places he definitely should touch. And, yes, and I'm quite sure he'll have a great holiday in Switzerland and Croatia, which you are planning right now. I do. I mean, this is also a great feeling for me to meet Mr. Pankaj Patel. First time, sir, I saw you in 2009, and he was at that time heading AMA. We had a very small center called something about commerce and exports here, where we used to give some minor funding. He wanted to come and give the presentation. I told him, you are too big a person. He cannot possibly have you coming to my office and giving a presentation on this subject. Rather send across this thing, whatever we can do, we'll try to do that. But that is, I think, that was his greatness. That was his professionalism, that when he was pushing an agenda, he wanted to really go to every authority and tell him what are the things to be done. It's a great pleasure. Last time I was just telling Mr. Patel, I saw him on virtually when we lost a common friend, a great friend, Dr. Guru Prasad Mahapatra, during COVID period. He was, with me, like we went to the same school, same college, same university, same cadre. At some point of time, worked in the same district, so he was more than an elder brother. He had such great feelings for Mr. Patel. This is what I would take this opportunity to tell that in private, whenever we used to talk, the visits which they did to Europe, I think Europe or USA, if I'm not mistaken, he came back with such great impression about Mr. Patel's capabilities, his vision, and he used to tell me about your friendship. Today, I think we'll remember that Gujarat lost a great man. We lost a great man, but he worked for the society till the last breath. I think it will be very nice for us to remember his memories. As I told you, I came for my friend, but everybody is a friend. I'll just like to, whatever little I know about, I like to pick up. What I understood out of what Mr. Jain spoke about, one was the essentially regulatory compliances. This is quite obviously very, very complicated and very, very different kind of a field. We would like to be your flag bearer, but you will have to tell us exactly which are the things which you need to take up. I don't want to hazard a guess without knowing the subject. So quite obviously different ministries deal with different subjects. Ours is generic ministry who works with every ministry which we work. The issues regarding essentially reduction of compliance burden, this is something. Regarding ecosystem and innovation, you'll be very happy to know that my ministry and the chemical ministry have started working together. We have actually in the last few months, we have had meetings And we are working seriously how we can really work on these particular fields. I have taken down this particular point, that how really to develop an ecosystem in innovation, which you talked about with academia and all. And I think it's a very, very valid point which we'll take up. Regarding the regulatory thing, I would expect Mr. Jain, if you can exactly tell me, you spoke very beautiful examples. You gave examples regarding, I mean, insistence on size, insistence on scale. Maybe I'm not very sure which particular part of the bureaucracy does it. But no, there's not a point we discuss. It's not a question of criticism or anything. All I'm trying to say is I won't have that kind of deeper knowledge as you are having. So what I would definitely request you is to pass on the information so that we can definitely work towards compliance reduction in any field. I mean, it is definitely our job to do it, and we'd like to do it. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
Can I request Mr. Viranchi Shah to say a few words on the pharma sector, the challenges and opportunities faced by the pharma sector?
Thank you. Most respected Shri Pankajbhai Patel, he signifies one of the taglines that Vasa Sahib uses, education to entrepreneurship. And I think there is no better example we have of a person who has used his education to create a very successful enterprise. And his company is also an epitome, as he said, of transformation from SMEs to a global MNC. Respected Shri B.B. Swain sir, Secretary, MSME, Government of India. I happened to meet him a couple of times in Delhi. The last interaction, sir, with you was on the dais of the launch of the SPI in presence of Honorable Mansukh Bhai. Shri Rahul Shah, Anil Bhai. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate a very good and dear friend, Jamin Bhai, for the launch of his book, Global SMEs and Strategies for Sustainable Growth. He spoke of his passion, but I think it takes much more than passion, because it's not only just about passion. The depth you have to have about the subject is very important if you want to express it, if you want to pen it down. You really need to know the subject 360 degrees, and he has done a lot of good work on how to create sustainable growth in MSME sectors. Congratulations to you, Jamin Bhai. I come from a sector that is most talked about recently. And in this context, since I'm also the president of an association that represents the pharmaceutical industry, I have very recently I had my hands to wonderful work that is done at the apex of this nation by an institute called Institute for Competitiveness. And this is personally monitored by the Economic Advisory Committee under the PMO. And I was amazed to see that the nation, the topmost authorities of the nation are trying to understand how India could become very competitive by 2047. And it was even more surprising for me looking at the people who have contributed, because we aspire to even see once in a lifetime, people like Michael Porter, if you know, the guru of strategy, is one of the people who have contributed, and there is Mr. Amitabh Kant and a host of other people who have contributed in trying to understand how India can become competitive. And the book so starts with a quote, with a motto of Olympic, the Citius Altius Fructius, which actually means that the nation wants to be stronger, higher, and more successful. And I think this is all about how we create an ecosystem so that by 2047 we all graduate from a low-income country, which is something around $1,900 currently, which in terms of the PPP dollars translate to some $6,000. And the target that we have is from $1,900 of a per capita income, we graduate to at least $10,000 per capita. And this would include a growth which is socially inclusive, which is economically inclusive. And I was also amazed to see that a lot of impetus has there also been put on MSMEs. And there is in fact a very detailed study on how the current MSMEs and startup are performing, and what kind of strategies could be used to enhance their performance. And sir, I would not go into the entire theory, but I would just correlate certain things that relate to pharmaceutical industry, because this is another very important industry. We all know currently we have a market size of around 45 billion US dollars, that, something between 45 and 50, let's say. And we have a potential even at the CAGR of about 11 to 12%. We are likely to grow to around 500 to 600 billion by 2047. And usually they say that success comes at the cross section, at the intersection of potential and talent. And here we can see there is a potential for the nation to grow, especially in this sector. While in other sectors we are talking of China plus, I'm very happy to state that we are in pharmaceutical sector, we can boast of India plus, because India is leading in many sectors, especially the formulation industry. And therefore I see there is a lot of potential. And what we have to bring to the table is the talent. And I think there is no dearth of talent in India, especially in the MSME sectors. But how do we foster this talent to come to a stage where they become global performers? Because I will tell you very clearly, friends, that there is no space for average players in this world. And if you, in your sector, are performing way above average, you have a great potential to grow. There is a big pie to be taken. But the important thing is, how do you ensure that your performance is way above the average? And if you use simple mathematics of compounding, the pharmaceutical industry is growing around 10 to 11%. As an SME, you can easily do twice what your industry is growing because of the inherent advantages, because you are already small and you have the agility, you have the technical expertise. You can easily grow 20%. And if you can do so, and just use a simple calculator, if you multiply, if you compound it for 10 years, just focus on your business for 10 years, and if you achieve 20% growth, you will be amazed to see the result. It comes to 6.19. So if you are doing a 100 rupee business today or a 1 crore business today, you can multiply 6.19 times in the next 10 years just by focusing on 20% growth, which is, I think, very much achievable at the MSME scale. So what do we do to compound this? And I think there are internal and external factors that would both are required to contribute. And since Mr. Swain is here, I would like to, sir, take your liberty to highlight some of the external contributors that could help this industry to grow. I think one of the most important, I would say, enablers could be ease of doing business, not simply in terms of making a single window system, not just using a simple e-governance, but there are a lot of things on the ground that are required to be done. And I'm sure, since you are a very senior bureaucrat, you are definitely aware. I'm just trying to highlight some of the things that could really help going forward. So ease of doing business beyond the governance, bringing it to the last mile, making compliance easy. There is a lot of activity going on at the central government on how to make, reduce the cost and efficiency that goes into compliance, how to reduce the compliance burden. I think if we can effectively address this, there's a lot of way we can help these enterprises to deploy their resources in other productive areas. So how do we, on a regulatory or on a policy basis, how do we improve the, to make it easy for an entrepreneur to comply? Because most of the SMEs, sir, are low resource organizations. They have limited resource, both in terms of the capital, in terms of the manpower and the skills. And therefore, how do we help them to optimize their usage of the resources they have by making that life little easier for them? Another area which my very good friend Anil Bhai touched was about the ease of getting capital for, and that is really a challenge for many of the MSMEs. In fact, one of the information that has been shared is that in China, for example, the lending to the private sector is almost 180% of the GDP as compared to India, where we are in the range of 30s or 40s. So how could we improve the lending to the private sector so that the ideas they have could be translated into products or services that actually benefit the ecosystem? There is one of the things. And of course, internally, if we look in terms of the enterprises, entrepreneurs, I think one of the most definitive areas where we all have to work, and this may not require a lot of government help, is in terms of productivity. Because the average productivity that we get, and I'm again quoting from the same report, it says that the productivity of India is compared to, and I'm talking of productivity of contribution to the GDP per employment that is there in the sector. And that is way below what China or Philippines or Brazil or Indonesia, some of these competing economies do. So how do we improve the productivity of the resources that we have? And I think that is totally an internal challenge for the industry. So that could require maybe using better technologies, using IT enabled, your processes could be digitalized, or using IT enabled processes or controls. How do we best use our the capital, whatever capital we have? Because I think one of the common problems I have seen in many SMEs is they want to do a lot of things at the same time. And I think what is required is exactly opposite. If you're good at something and you can focus on it, and just focus on 20 or 25% of growth, or maybe in whichever industry you are, maybe twice of what your industry is growing, and that is easily achievable. So if you just focus on what you want to do for the next 10 years, I think there's a great scope of growth that we all can achieve. So I think optimizing our productivity is one of the very important ways of how companies can look inward. And this could be done by improving our technologies. As I said, the IT enabled activities, you can focus on very specific areas where you have strength, which will help you to use your resources in much better way. And there could be a lot of other things. It will depend individually on your where you are, because there is no one India. There are many India in India. And in the same way, even in the pharmaceutical sector, there are companies who are on various levels of their business model. So we have in very evolution, very small scale, we have medium, and we have, of course, we have large scale companies. So based on what is your business model and what kind of activities you are involved into, how do you consolidate your resources and focus on what you're doing best? I think that could help all of us to grow. And I would just like to close with one quote that I have used earlier, that comes from Mahabharata. And we all remember the greatest warriors in Mahabharata, and when we think of them, we usually think of Arjun or maybe Krishna as a strategist, or probably Bhim. But for the sake of record, they say that the most powerful warrior in Mahabharata was Barbaric. And he could hardly contribute to the war because probably didn't have the chance to do it. So I'm sure, and Barbaric was blessed with 3 arrows of Shiva, and these 3 arrows will never fail. Yet, people don't know about it. He couldn't contribute to the war. So I'm sure there are a lot of Barbarics in this room who have products which would never fail, but probably they didn't have that platform to come up and perform. So I think there is a wonderful future that we all have, at least in the next 10 to 25 years. We all need to focus, and we all request the government for that additional little help that we all want. But we should remember that the help that comes from the government is just a vitamin pill. It will help you to balance some of the deficiencies you have. You cannot live on a pill. You still need the food, you need to cook it, you need to earn it. So we'll all need to do what we want to do, and we'll request Swain Saab to give us that additional vitamin pill so that we can grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Biranchi sir. It's a great pleasure to share the stage again. And that was also one of the examples where our ministry and pharmaceuticals work together. Because we appreciate that being a generic kind of a ministry, most of our schemes tend to be very, very sector agnostic, because obviously it has to be very general in nature. Lately, as I clarified, we have started working with different line ministries, product ministries, wherever we can bring in certain kind of different kind of changes. And I think those schemes which are launched, at least for the MSMEs, will be definitely of a great benefit. And that was one of the things, and it was really a pleasure. The point I take home is essentially about ease of doing business and compliance button. This is what is, I think, the primary thing. With somebody as expert, having an expertise as Mr. Patel, I find it, I really will not venture.
We have compliance burden. If you make a list of that, it is 1900 plus.
Could be. I mean, I'll be absolutely foolish to make a comment on that, because your 1900 must be 100% to the point. And all I'm trying to say is this is a take-home point for us, that you see, there's compliance burden. DPIIT is the organization which has been mostly taking the lead, and they have done wonderful work. However, I do agree that for MSMEs there could be very, very specific kind of compliance burdens which probably needs to be either liberalized or it would be done. This is a very good take-home point. You also spoke about the productivity, which is brilliant, and you actually said this is an internal kind of a thing. This is where the industry has to really come up. I'll not like to get into great details on specific sectors, but all I'm trying to say is the way we look at MSME sector today is not to say that everything federal government is doing is the only thing federal government is doing. Actually, it is happening everywhere. It is happening, all states are having wonderful schemes, all are working towards this particular field. This continues to a very core sector, like Jo Patel Sahab ne kaha, this is today called the number 2 employment provider in the country after agriculture. But I think the way things are going in exactly 10 years from today, this undoubtedly would be the highest employment provider of the country. I'll give an example. The data which we normally are using is the 2016 data. It's a sample survey, and so that says that 6.3 crore MSMEs in the entire country, 11.3 crore MSMEs, so the point which you made. Now we have started doing the Udyam registration from 2020, which is, is much more scientific. It checks with GST and it checks with PAN, so it's a very, very verified kind of a data. Today, our figure is 1.05 crore. It's a continuous thing. Every day we get about 20 to 28,000 registrations. And data says that it is 1.05 crore. The employment, it says it's 7.7 crore. What does this indicate? This clearly indicates that the earlier data could have been highly conservative, because it's a sample survey, it would be conservative. This is throwing out absolutely real-time data. And if it is showing at the level of, for MSME 7, that's a very, very big factor, because all calculations show it is typically ranges around 7 to 8 for a micro enterprise. Now that is something which we are reaching. I have a feeling that in next 1 or 2 years, this would become a very, very huge data, and which will probably give us the exact indication of the sector and its employment capacities. What we are working on are generic, but we are working on formalization. We are working on what you very rightly said, the credit gap. UK Sinha committee calculated 20 to 30 trillion rupees actually. So obviously there is a credit gap, and there is a lot of efforts going on how to bridge that credit gap. There are many other factors, but a very, very important factor is something today in the morning also I did talk about it, is kind of schemes which Government of India is trying to bring in, like RAMP and all, which is talking essentially about a coordinated response. We need to have a response which involves the federal government, the state governments, the industry, all the stakeholders, where you have a very, very coordinated response. Our schemes should be actually working in tandem. They should be really have the maximum effectivity level. And those are the things which probably we are now working on. What we are aiming for is every state and every union territory to come up with a SIP, a strategic investment plan as part of this particular project, and to work towards it. We will obviously ensure also part funding for many of these projects. Let us hope, that is the way. I don't want to get into very particular with experts present. I think it will be very odd for me to start commenting on those things. But I think a lot of these things are well appreciated, and a lot of things are part of the policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for providing information on the pharma sector. I would now like to ask Mr. Rahul Shah, ACME International, to please share your views on the challenges and opportunities that MSME face in the textile industry.
Dr. Jameen Bhai, I tell my friends that I'm a born writer, but a forced businessman. So it is my dream to write something like you have done. My congratulations and best wishes. I believe it takes a lot of passion and time to do what you have done. So congratulations and best wishes for this wonderful achievement. My colleagues here, Viranchi Bhai, Anil Bhai, Pankaj Bhai, the pride of Gujarat, and my friends here. I will take this opportunity to highlight two challenges that the textile sector faces. We have 7 companies across textiles in trading, manufacturing, digital, and retail. And as Pankaj Bhai says, out of this 7, 2 have grown up to become large enterprises. So I've gone through the journey of forming MSMEs, having MSMEs, and growing into large enterprises. As Mr. Swain is here, sir, I will highlight 2 challenges that I feel are important on behalf of the textile industry. The first challenge, I believe, is challenge which I call banking. In 2005, I formed my first manufacturing MSME. I took the loan from Yes Bank. Recently, 2 years back, I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Prashant Kumar, the chairman of Yes Bank. And I told him a question. I said, sir, I came to you in 2005. I said I wanted to set up a manufacturing facility. You said I need collaterals, 60% collateral. I gave you my office, my land, my factory. 3 years again, later I came down, I said I want to expand. So he says, okay, we will give you money, we need collaterals. So I gave him my house. Again, after 3 years I came back, I said again I want to expand. He says collateral. So I said, sir, I do not understand the magic of how you can keep on creating new collaterals every 3 years, unless and until I will not take out the money from the business. So the biggest challenge of a trader or a manufacturer, sir, remains banking. Today, when you go to ask money, and today finance is the most important thing to set up any industry or any trading business. And banks ask you for 60% collateral, not the first time, not the second time, every time. How do we see this, and how can we formulate a way? And at the end of this meeting, Mr. Prashant Kumar told me, he says, you're right, that for a customer who has been with us for 10 years, we must not look at collaterals, we must look at the customer's history, his track record. That must be the most important part rather than the collaterals. But today, for most of new MSMEs or new people coming as an MSME, banking remains the biggest challenge, sir. So I believe government must look at it or find something to help MSMEs in terms of reducing the collateral coverage or helping them finance in some way. The second challenge that I would like to bring to you, sir, is insurance. We are in textiles. We produce fabrics. Textiles is full of MSMEs. There are so many small traders who are MSMEs, so many small manufacturers. We make fabric. We sell the fabric to garment manufacturers. There are so many small MSME garment manufacturers, in lakhs, I would say. These garment manufacturers make garments, supply to retailers, and we supply to big retailers. Tomorrow, when any of this retailer goes bankrupt, the money that we have given to them as credit does not come. So if a big retailer goes bankrupt, let's say for 500 crore, it means garment manufacturers will lose 500 crore. It means the fabric manufacturer will lose 500 crore. It's a tripling effect, right? Now, when you go into exports in a similar way, you have the Export Credit and Guarantee Corporation of India that ensures the risk of giving credit in exports. Why do we not have such an organization for ensuring our risk in the domestic market? Which means that if I am selling my cargo or goods to any large organization, and if that organization goes bankrupt, the insurance company must pay me. And this system exists in Europe, in US, everywhere. Everywhere, if something like that happens, for example, in US, Sears went bankrupt. So the manufacturers who supply to Sears get 90% of the funds immediately. 10% comes at a later on stage after due diligence. In India, the biggest problem is bad debts. In our business, in terms of traders and manufacturers, is that if any retailer or any big organization goes bankrupt, it comes down as a crippling effect. And imagine an MSME who loses 1 crore or 2 crore. What effect and how many years back it will go because of this. So these, I believe, are 2 real challenges that I would like to put up as far as textiles is concerned, banking and insurance. And I believe the government needs to look at as MSME. It is the engine of growth today for India, for the textile industry. And I believe textiles has the largest MSME as an industry. And I believe these 2 challenges must be looked upon so that MSMEs keep on growing and thriving, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rahul, sir. I think as far as the banking is concerned, yes. I'll give an example. We run something called a champions grievance redressal. You'll be happy to know that we recently crossed 50,000. Nothing to be very happy about getting 50,000 complaints, but something to be very happy that we tackled 99%. So which makes me happy. We want more complaints to come in, but it's not a question of complaints. But when we study this pattern of the issues which are coming up from MSMEs, sector agnostic across the board, typically it is credit and technology. These are the two which we get, and then we realize that the Indian MSME, quite obviously, these are the primary issues. So I'll fully agree with you. Quite obviously, the bankers will have their own reasons, the client will have their own reasons, but we need to probably bring in newer products. Guarantee is a way out, but there have been issues. We run, I would say, fairly successful scheme called CGTM.
In COVID, we had the ECLGS.
I know.
70% was supported by the government.
See, ECLGS is a great success. The target, the achievement as on date is 3 lakh crore plus. It has benefited almost 2 lakh 12,000, I think, 2.212 crore, out of which a predominant area was actually MSME sector.
Yes.
Though in a figure wise you can say that is about 2 lakh crore, but the number wise if you look at it, it's almost 70-80% in the MSME sector. It's definitely a great success. The scheme which we have been running for micro and small earlier is called CGTMSE, where we have a trust. This year it crossed 50,000 crore. I mean, I will not claim that it's a huge figure, but 50,000 crore for the first time this year it crossed. What we are working on, if you look at the budget document of this particular year, there is a declaration. There is a declaration that there will be further changes in the CGTMSE kind of a thing. We are working on some basic things, like whether we can bring in, we are already included trading as part of it. We are also looking at how medium can be brought into that. And one particular issue for the micro and small is quite obviously the guarantee fee, because everybody says there is an interest rate and then you are asking a guarantee fee. So even if it's a replacement of collateral, it doesn't really help because I'm paying actually higher kind of figure. Now, how much of money will go into it to bring that particular this thing? These are all works in progress. Let us see what is the kind of investment we will ultimately be able to convince finance on that. And quite obviously, this is a time span of about 2 to 3 months in which we like to do that. And we're working very seriously on that, how to bring in these products with much less fees, much higher coverage of guarantee can be given. As far as the banks are concerned, yes, I mean, we have been working together. This is not a question of contesting anything. DFS and we are sister ministries, and we quite obviously work on it. It's a very regular kind of a thing. Let's hope that all these particular problems, sooner or later, will definitely have its own solution. You spoke a very nice thing about insurance in particular, because I have a connection with ECC. I have been a director for quite some time. And I do appreciate the export insurance. These are the things which you say the products are available in Europe and all. I would like this thing, if you can kindly share them with me. The internal things. The external thing does exist, ECC and other things exist, but how this particular kind of a insurance cover, what are these particular products? I do not have much of a knowledge of it. If you share it with me, you will have an advocate who will be pushing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing the views on the textile industry. We are now going to have a small and a very quick Q&A with 3 questions, one for each sector, please. So anybody would like to ask? With the time constraint, we need to go very quick. So anybody can, ask a question for each sector.
But the sectoral answer will be given by the specialist. I'm quite clear about it. I don't expect me to become a specialist. I'm too generic actually to be.
Now, we've got eminent speakers to answer. So if anybody has a question, kindly come forward, please.
Please.
My question is general. To Sven sir. See, this MSME sector, I was going through the literature for the old essays, I think subject was there. 29% GDP that MSME contributes. 11 crores of employment plus that this MSME sector gives. And 50% of the total export, 50%. If this is the condition for the MSME, you must have very big plan from the government side. Can you narrate some of the things that you would like to implement immediately
many plans must be there, but few that you would like to help really, because so many things have been told. They have expectations, they have difficulties. What are the things that you would like to really help? Some few things.
I'll just refer to two things which I'm working on right now. I mean, thank you so much for asking this question, but I'll tell you about things which I have certain level of passion for. We would like to bring in a scheme where there is actual handholding in a physical and also in a virtual manner, where a person sitting in a village, let us for an example sitting in Jasdan, wants to send some kind of product, wants to sell some kind of product. Not only we should have a e-facility in which the product can be sold, the product can probably reach Calcutta, but we should have person sitting in the state headquarters or a district headquarters who actually goes to that person, teaches him the concept of packaging, teaches him the concept of everything, onboard him. So that I think is a kind of a dream which I have. This is something which we have started working on. I want to bring in a situation where the poorest of the poor actually starts getting benefits. I'm quite sure a lot of things about credit, a lot of things about formalization, everything is going on. But this is something which will give me the greatest of satisfaction if we can develop a system in the entire country in which the poorest of the poor actually gets a handholding from persons who teaches them the game of the business. Quite obviously, Gujarat, of course, I think Gujarat, I mean, I just keep remembering the story about Gujarat Agro, who started exporting mangoes many years back. 3 years down the line, they didn't have business because the farmers were exporting to London. So I think the business had been taken away to the farmers. So maybe Gujarat is very, very advanced, but we are working. One of the things which we have started working is where we tell our officers that look at the map. Look at your projects, look at what has happened in the last 20 years, 30 years, look where the money has gone, no problem. Because quite obviously, let us say in our clusters, it actually benefits 9 states. That's not the problem with those states. Those states have the ecosystem to use that kind of resources. So that's not the problem with the state. But it is our duty also not just to benefit, let us say state like Gujarat or Maharashtra, but also go to the farthest of the points and try and do handholding there. In a number of our schemes, we have identified those maps, our strategies for our extension activities, a lot of activities is being coordinated with that. So since you asked me a very specific question, what is the scheme which you are working on which will give the maximum happiness? Personally, I would say that if I can develop this particular system, where there is an approachability of a person, he can actually give a call, and there should be people who should go and we should handhold him and we should see to it that he gets into business. That I think is something which will give me a great satisfaction, and that is something we are aiming at. We have made a start. Our offices' names have been changed. Our offices were called Development Institute, a very fine name, but now we call them Development and Facilitation Offices. So our essential intention is facilitation, and we would like to do that. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for your inputs on various aspects. Specifically Anil Jain sir, when we are talking of challenges which are being faced in terms of ecosystem, in terms of routes of synthesis, in terms of developing new technologies, we have some ecosystem which is being coming up in institutions. So can we have problem statements like the government of Gujarat has released a very nice book on all problem statements from the different ministries. If the association comes forward with the problem statements that these are things which we are looking forward for assistance, then educational institutions can come forward with whatever technologies which we have, and we can try to assist in some way in which we can. Because we have ecosystems, some which is being developed in terms of SSRP, in terms of incubation centers which are available with us. Maybe we can do something and help. That's possible.
Yeah, I think it's a very welcome thought, because yesterday only I was at an SLEC meeting with the state government where they kind of disseminate grants for these projects. And MSME, I think, is a fit case for the B grant which they have, that they would sponsor projects where MSME cannot afford the infrastructure. They can get a project problem statement done and give it to a CSIR or an institute where the government would fund the institute directly and the problem will be solved of the industry.
Because we have the funding from SSIP also. It's also a nodal center for MSMEs, where MSMEs can come and put the proposals and then it goes for funding. So such inputs are available from our side, say at LM College of Pharmacy. We can assist. So if some problem statements are available, then some positive impact can be created.
Surely, I think we'd like to welcome you to GCCI also, where we have an R&D setup.
Thank you.
Please, most welcome to visit us. We can take it forward.
Once again, good evening to everyone. I think what Mr. Rahul said, it's a question of insurance as well as collateral. Already CGT-MSE is serving to an extent to that purpose. So our request as an MSME will be, you please raise the, I think 2 or 3 crore as of now it is available. Please raise to an extent and in the form of CC, not in a term manner, which is to be forwarded. And please guide implementing bank, because what they are doing, at once they are sanctioning CGT-MSE, and then because we are paying certain insurance charges toward that, they are converting it to their own products. These are the experience. It's a personal experience. But
this is the factor which you have raised. Number one is whether it can be raised from 2 crore to 5 crore. This has been the general industry demand. We are working towards it. Let's hope that we very quickly will bring a result to it. As I told you about the reduction in the fees, increase in the coverage, these are the factors which you have talked about. The bank particular kind of a thing I need to understand. Maybe if you can explain it to Mr. Gupta at some point of time, we can explain to him. I am prepared to take it up, both with the participating banks and also with CCTV.
And rate of interest, no?
The rate of interest of the banks, I don't really have much. But definitely we are working on reducing the guarantee fees. That we are definitely working on. Thank you.
There are sandwiches product which are being offered.
Okay. I mean, I'll probably request a kind of a listing of this particular issue. Thank you so much. This is an excellent idea which you have given. We'll work towards that.
One last question, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I have a question, Sven Saab. I have a question, a very, very pertinent question I have. You see, we have been talking about setting up of MSMEs and pushing them and supporting them. What about making them sustain themselves? You see, when we an MSME is 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, what happens is that there are issues which are still coming up for the MSME, like labor issues. Now, you know, it's a big issue that's coming up right now in Gujarat government. You might be aware that the wage revision is coming up in a big way, 26%, or I think 34% or something is coming up. The labor issue, can we come to your ministry for an intra-ministerial support to voice, so that our voice can be heard by that ministry, whatever the ministry may be. The ministry, I'm talking about textile ministry. Now, textile ministry has got tough scheme, but for small reasons, you know, the things get stuck, they don't listen. How can the Ministry of MSME interact? Do you have an intra-ministry something, some rapport or something where you can help us sustain?
Now, this is what we normally, I'm becoming old, but I think it is Mr. Janak Nanavati, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
No, he has been an old friend like you. All I'm trying to say is, yes, as a ministry, we do these things. As far as the federal government is concerned, if you take up an issue with us, be sure that definitely we'll be taking, we'll examine it. If we feel there is some correctness in the whole thing, I mean, everything which we receive might not have, let us say certain things are against the law, whatever. But the fact remains is, be sure that if you're taking up this particular issue, it relates to a sister ministry. Please trust us that we'll definitely take it up and we'll push the case. Thank you.
I want to reply.
Yeah, please.
For the first question. Janak Bhai, regarding the TUF point that you raised, we took it up last week with the Textile Commissioner. I had a meeting in Bombay with her on behalf of GCCI, and I explained to her the challenges that we have here, and they have promised us that they will be holding a camp in Ahmedabad
to which will be like a single window clearance where we can have a one-to-one interaction to resolve our issues. Just to answer your point here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and sorry we shall not be taking more questions, but you could write to Dr. Jamin Vasa, MSME AMA, and we shall get the answers for you. Can I please request Mr. Savan Ghodiawala, Vice President AMA, to address the vote of thanks.
Thanks. Respected Swain sir, thanks for coming. Pankaj Bhai, our own Pankaj Bhai, of course, and as Swain sir said, how humble a man of such a stature could be that we are seeing him every day. Jaimin Bhai, Anil Bhai, Dr. Viranchi, Rahul Bhai, Runal Ben. Of course, firstly, compliments to Jaimin Bhai, a serial author, right? You know, back to back. So passion, commitment, and we can see how vibrant that he would always be when it comes to any of the knowledge initiatives. And again, thanks to him for this center also, which is also so vibrant because of him taking so much of interest. I think just I'll take 2 minutes. Very important summary that we had right from Pankaj Bhai, that this is a decade of the country, and then how can we afford to lose this decade that we have in hand by not initiating things that the government, and he gave some examples of China and others, but certainly we cannot afford when we are in that sweet spot zone that this country can lose any of this time that we have coming to us. And of course, Anil Bhai, you gave some statistics, but there was some relation that I could see between among all the three sectors. One, you said that industry academia connect, and Dr. Viranchi mentioned talent. So very important that how do we make sure that this is achieved, and this has been discussed a lot of time, and for MSMEs especially, they do not go to the large consultants. Naturally, if we can get the right talent and right support, right platforms, that could be so important. And of course, maybe on the statistics that you gave, 4%, 18%, but I think it's the size of the economy that more or less, even a larger, not a specialty chemicals, but the larger sector would be more or less in the same range. Of course, Dr. Viranchi added that there's capital and productivity. Very important that how do we achieve, this is something which is so important. And to relate to what Pankaj Bhai said, that every SME and then MSME and medium, and then they become large, this is a path, and then this is so important to ensure that the efficiencies, productivity. Then important point, thanks Rahul, one eye-opening point about the insurance. Of course, why this has been for ages, right? For decades that the export credit insurance has been there and why not for the domestic, and which can destabilize the whole supply chain when there are several supply chains. Certainly thanks, and many thanks, and many thanks, Swain sir, for the responding. The compliance certainly is the backbone, and Pankaj Bhai mentioned that so many compliances that everybody is making. And imagine an MSME doing so many compliances in the ecosystem that they function. And of course, ease of doing business that you recognize, so much welcome that you said that the queries. So on behalf of AMA, I must thank our dignitaries. Swain sir, thank you. Pankaj Bhai, who better than Pankaj Bhai to release a book as an entrepreneur? Who better than Swain sir to release a book as the MSME Secretary, Government of India? And certainly Jaimin Bhai is a matter of certain fortunate event. Thanks Anil Bhai, Dr. Viranchi and Rahul Bhai, and thanks Runal Ben for this. Certainly thank you everybody for being here, and Jaimin Bhai, as he is, we keep on doing so many events under the center, Dr. Jaimin Vasa, MSME, AMA MSME Development Center. Thanks for coming again. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. And one more thing, I would want to give a token of love as memento to our guest of honors. So Swain sir and Pankaj Bhai, please.